This is a Fox News alert. As we just discussed before the break, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says the Department of Justice served the Fed with a grand jury subpoena related to his testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. The New York Times is reporting that a criminal investigation has been opened into the chairman over those renovations at the Fed headquarters. Now, in a statement, Powell says, quote, "This unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings." So, guys, he is basically saying this is a pretext. Trump has been, the president, very critical of the chairman here on interest rates on a number of fronts. It's very clear that there's no love lost there. Trump has sparred with that guy over these renovations, and now there's this criminal investigation, apparently, into it. I've lived through enough Trump drama to wait and see what the actual facts are before leaning in too much into any narrative. But, Joey, you know that the narrative coming from at least one side here is going to be Trump hates Powell. He's been pressuring Powell for a long time. And now here's the Justice Department swooping in. It's political. What do you think?
I think that any sunshine is good. That's what I think. I think our federal government, in a way, is at war with itself in a very partisan way. I mean, that's kind of obvious. We saw the previous president under the Biden administration, the previous president get investigated and indicted in several different ways. A lot of it really completely fell apart, and the rest of it continues to. So there's one side of it. The other side of it is, through all of that, I learned that we had one previous president that had documents at Mar-a-Lago that probably shouldn't be there. We had another one that had documents in his carport that shouldn't be there. And now we're learning that a Fed chair might have lied under testimony about splurging on renovations that he shouldn't have. What do we get from all this? Hopefully the next generation of leaders think twice before they pad their own pockets or do anything that, by the letter of the law, they shouldn't do. So I think it's ultimately a good thing that we have to live through this. If there's some sunshine on the back end, I don't know it's going to turn into some sort of conviction, but hey, if you didn't do anything wrong, I guess don't be upset if they're looking.
Tommy, it seems to me that we're going to get probably some high decibel opposition to what will be framed as lawfare from a party that has largely celebrated lawfare when the shoe's on the other foot. But if there's some truth to the criticism, is it a fair thing to say maybe we shouldn't be going after political enemies using the power of criminal prosecutions?
Yeah, I don't like weaponization no matter who does it. But to Joey's point, you know, if we get something out of it, again, it's too early to know what this all entails. When you hear it's about renovations, it's like HGTV. I mean, I'm like, what are we talking about? But President Trump is very passionate about building projects, and we remember that squabble that the two had last year, side by side, I believe, when they were looking at some of the renovations. So maybe we shouldn't be surprised.
Well, and that project, by the square footage, is the most expensive government building ever made. And so that is worth looking at. And if they found something, maybe that's what this is a result of.
Yeah, so Nicole, the shouting has already started. I would like to see some of the depth here, but I wonder what you think.
Well, if a Fed chair misled Congress on a multi-billion-dollar project, then, you know, accountability is the right thing to do. I mean, I guess the budget was 1.9 and it ballooned to 2.5, and there's some question as to being misleading Congress. I mean, that's a big problem. This is taxpayer dollars. But I would say that you have to be very careful about turning the DOJ against an independent Fed, because that risks putting the United States financial system could potentially erode confidence on the world scale.
I just want to rephrase what I had to say. My point is, mutually assured destruction should not be a path in D.C. to assured corruption. And I think that's a part, maybe not in huge, but that's a part of the D.C. culture that I've seen. Hey, we're not going to go after that person because they might come after us. And I think that's going away. Whether it's good or bad for us, I don't know. I think it could be good.
Now, Powell's term, of course, is winding down. He's reacting to this. We read some of the statement. Apparently, we have some sound from him as well.
The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation.
All right, so that is basically the accusation. He's saying this has nothing to do with renovations. It has nothing to do with what I said before Congress. The president wanted me to do X. I wouldn't do it because I'm independent and I'm being punished and potentially, indicted or investigated for it. And he's saying this is really a fight over an independent Fed moving forward. That's the way he's framing this up, Tommy.
Yeah, well, and also it kind of harkens back to Comey and Letitia James and some of the cases against them that ultimately didn't result in much. So we'll see what we've got here. I mean, listen, when we talk about taxpayer dollars, it's important that we have all the information. Apparently, there was enough here to do this, so I'd like to see the evidence. But we know what the other side is going to say, and it's a pretty easy route for them to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Trump's ire towards Jerome Powell is pretty obvious and evident. And so you've given the other side this talking point. It's just what comes of it. If they actually find things that are pretty obviously illegal, then that talking point goes away.
This is on the DOJ to really put forth what this evidence was, because they're right. They were walking into criticism, which, by the way, I can understand, too. I mean, all you've heard is criticism from President Trump about Jerome Powell, and now all of a sudden we're hearing about this. So the impetus is on the DOJ to make sure that they have a very sound case here right now, and this is not political weaponization.
Yep, the evidence has to be really solid and compelling, or else the critics saying this is retaliation for political reasons, I think, would be vindicated. Let's see what the evidence actually shows. How about that?
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.